I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. This is episode 450, Andrew. 450 hours of perfection, they're saying.
Well, sometimes they're 2 hours, so goddamn, they're talking about potting inflation over here.
I mean, we might have cleared 1,000 hours.
Possibly. There were many episodes that didn't clock in at 120 minutes, but I would say you're right. And there's been some lost tapes.
There's been some lost tapes. If we went back to the No Wave archives, then easy, because that was a couple years.
Can't believe how long
So,
ago that was. Yeah.
when would you say that we mastered potting?
I think the minute we turned on the microphones. When we thought about potting. I mean, of course.
Like right away, immediately.
Yeah. Shout out to Hot Dog Legs, our Aussie ally, Jordan Rodelli, who held it down for many of those hours.
Look at me pretending like 500 episodes isn't around the corner when we're going to repeat this whole rigmarole with even more pomp, more circumstance.
Who do we have on number 400? Was that Pablo?
I think it was Pablo. Maybe Network was on 300
Yeah,
or
was it
250. I don't know. We just get really hyped up with these arbitrary 150 spots.
Maybe in 100 more hours we'll have an Asian on that isn't me.
That's Pablo. Yeah, I guess that's all we do.
Pablo, you're back.
Network, come through.
Pull up.
I haven't realized that you somehow have compelled us to only celebrate our huge moments with more Asians.
Well, your boy from Princeton just declared for the draft. We have to acknowledge the Asian people. Oh, Zach Edey playing tonight, if you're listening on Monday morning. Huge Asian moment.
This is a big Asian basketball moment. And then you had the Japanese guy who was on Utah, maybe? Where was he? Arkansas?
Oh.
I don't know. I'm not a college basketball
I'm a
head here,
tourist.
but yeah. Anyway, but yes, big Asian basketball moment. The dude from Lee from Harvard or Princeton, excuse me. I was kind of surprised that he went out to the draft, but we'll see if that's
you've
just
seen
to get
him,
some
right?
interest.
Did you go?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I went. I mean, he was talented and shifty. He's very sort of slight of build. I wasn't sure that he could really shoot from range, but I don't know. Whatever. He was a good player. But we're talking basketball. Let's stick with what's important. Asians.
Woo!
I've seen you recently on Twitter, and you've been talking about Asians, and I'm just a voyeur.
All right. I have to preface this. They're my homies. I know a lot of people there, but Momofuku just sent a cease and desist out to a bunch of mom and pop chili crisp entrepreneurs, makers, and that really caught the ire of the Asian community. And I don't first about the cease and desist. You kind of see what David Chang wants to do, right? Respect. I've enjoyed so many of his restaurants. I am Chinese. I am not Korean. So like my tastes kind of fall in different categories, but I love most of his projects. He kind of was one of the main.
Would you say your tastes are more refined? Is that what we're going for here?
I would say they're more on the Italian side. So if you put like General Tso's chicken and all Italian food in a bucket, that's what I'm into.
Right.
But he Chang was a main character in food kind of the food scene, but I want to call it something else. It was like when everyone got food woke. He was around, you know. Everyone's like, oh damn, buns, hoisin sauce, and he dabbles in a lot of other cuisines. He had an Italian / Chinese restaurant with like miso, cacio pepe, and he's made this chili crisp, which is like a Chinese thing, and there's no gatekeeper like an Asian gatekeeper, let me tell you. So that's kind of what I was responding to.
So let me ask you this. Would you say that chili crisp is something that David Chang should be allowed to copyright or trademark?
Sure. But he has to deal with the pushback. So it is like a self-policing community. Obviously, the government plays a role here with like trademark and copyright, but really it's in the court of public opinion, especially in a capitalist endeavor like making a product that sits on shelves, right? So I'm surprised he or someone on his team didn't come out and be like, that was our lawyers, my bad, that did not come from us. We hired a group of lawyers to help us with this project, and they went ahead and did this without our knowledge. Here's a foundation to help young Asian entrepreneurs. We're going to take on 5 of these brands and help them out with money, with like interest-free loans, something like that. I'm surprised that it's still silence, but there was a lot of people who claim that this kind of behavior was not helpful to the community, not helpful for American kind of opportunity, and just foul.
So what I read about this, and this was from a perspective of a critic of David Chang, and their point was that chili crisp is a condiment that has been used in Asian cooking for a long time, and that it should not be copywritten by anybody. And I guess the equivalent would be saying I'm copywriting or trademarking, whichever is more appropriate, I don't know, mayonnaise or mustard or something like that.
Or basketball.
Or
I mean,
joy of
kind
basketball.
Kind of, right? It's like, but you know,
Or
yeah.
cookies.
Right. You cannot copyright the word cookies. It is just a word that belongs to the people. Cookies is for the children.
Like a sandwich.
Only. But they're hot dog. Not only are Asians kind of tend to be gatekeeping centric, the hot sauce nerd community also plays a role here, where like there is like no one nerdier in that world than hot sauce nerds. Like there's some weird masculine kind of glazing for this experience. Like, are you tough enough to handle this heat? I'm like, fuck that heat. I don't want to like suffer through dinner. I want to have a chill dinner and have beer. But this also plays into it, like the competitiveness and the authorship of this condiment is unique to itself and doesn't behave like mayonnaise or ketchup or whatever.
I wouldn't say that I have this yearning to try extraordinarily hot food, like that sort of instinct to go and try the, I don't know, what's the super hot pepper called these days, like the,
Not the
you know,
ghost
that's all
pepper.
the names.
Yeah.
Not the ghost pepper. They're well beyond the ghost pepper at this point.
I don't even know, man.
Like the Carolina Reaper, something along those lines.
Right. Yo, I like my body. I don't like my body to implode unless it's from beer. But
Like this is 20 million Scoville points, Scoville levels, Scovilles, whatever they are. I don't have that urge. I will say though, if I get some hot food, look at it, it's on my plate, and maybe I start hiccuping, start sweating a little bit, I'm going to eat that food. I'm not being bullied by a bowl of ramen. No, sorry, Bob. I will go through the agony of finishing it if it's on my plate.
I am
can't
a
cow me into not eating. No, this is the only time that my dining masculinity really rises. I'm like, nope, no, you're not going to defeat me and my hunger.
It's a tie game. The clock is winding down. I'm gonna eat this fucking chili crisp.
I'm not saying this is the right way to be. I'm just saying this is who I am, Andrew.
Yeah. So I
I
don't
also
know.
I also don't love chili crisp. Being honest with you, man.
Real talk. It is not that good. It's kind of muddy. I don't like the texture of it. Even the Lao Gan Ma, like the famous one with the old nanny on it. Like that one's nice, but there's a ton of MSG in there, and MSG is delicious. But
I have that in the fridge. It's fine.
it's good.
It's not
right?
my bag. I kind of prefer garlic crisp, to be honest.
Yeah.
If we're gonna go in the crisp vicinity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would not say that either of them are my faves. I do prefer garlic over chili though.
There's a time for sriracha, like there's a time for a sandwich, but I don't enjoy sriracha enough to wear like a t-shirt or like gatekeep it. There was a sriracha shortage because the peppers that they used for it got wiped out because of something I forget, and it was gone for like a year. And I found it on the shelves of this Asian market in the Essex market, and I was like, "Oh damn, you guys have this!" And like, $10 is a lot, but like, that's not bad. And he was like, "Yo, you like this stuff? Because I got cases of it in a warehouse." I'm like, "Are you the hot sauce plug?" And I actually said that, and he was like, "I am. I'm the guy who keeps hard to get condiments, like this year's sriracha or their other product, which is just like a crushed chili with vinegar."
Like the bucatini of the pandemic.
Basically, he was like, "I supply the restaurants with this stuff who desperately want it." He's like, "I don't mark it up that much, but I do make a cut." Interesting. It's the hot sauce underworld, buddy.
You know what else is really dorky?
What's that?
Solar event perverts.
Wow.
Eclipse freaks.
It's like the Knicks. It happens once every 20 years.
So, I'm not enough of a cosmic event buff to know what the difference is between this eclipse and the one that occurred a few years ago, the one where Trump was squinting up into the heavens, and we all thought he might go blind.
And that Mr. Smithers guy was like rubbing his hands together.
Right, and that was what, 2018, whatever. I'm saying it was fairly recent. So I don't know how this one is a lifetime changing moment versus the prior one. I do know that this is my beloved Rochester's moment not in the sun, so to speak.
Syracuse,
people say.
Ithaca, that part of the world is getting their not shine.
At long last,
Yeah.
the spotlight will not be on Rochester.
Can they handle this volume of, like, there's leaf peepers, but does leaf peeping happen up there?
I mean, not really.
Not really, right?
I mean, you could, but it's not a thing in the same way the Catskills or Adirondacks would be.
Can we call these guys clips creepers?
It's not bad. I mean, wait, was the group the Clips just named after Eclipse? Was
Yes,
was their original name just the Eclipse?
I always assumed it was a pun of eclipse, like blacking out, and also clips of money, right?
Or Clips in a Gun?
There you go. Wow. Yo, not to take this tangent, but did you see Hugo and Pharrell are feuding
Yeah, I saw they're beefing.
over the name the Neptunes?
I don't think you should be able to copyright the name of a planet.
This is what I'm talking about, man. Can you own Uranus? It's not a planet. It's not a planet. Wait, it is a planet. Is Uranus still a planet? Which one got relegated?
Pluto, right?
Was it fucking Pluto? Can Disney?
I mean,
yeah.
dude, I'm not a solar event buff.
Oh wow, way to jump the shark on that. Okay, so you're not going up to Rochester getting like 7 plates of chicken riggies, like Zweigels everywhere, beef patties everywhere. You're not eclipsing your.
I thought about it. I considered it. If I hadn't been up for Easter, I might have. But the prospect of driving up and back, especially with the traffic that's going to be there, just unrealistic. I knew some people were going up and they'd never been to Rochester. Like, hey, you got some recommendations, like cute thrift stores, perhaps, bakeries. I'm like, I don't know. I can point you towards RX Pappy's childhood home, 12 Stout Street.
There is so much Rochester talk on this podcast.
It's really, it's great, is what it is.
It's like it casts an entire shadow over North America.
All right, let's see how the. Yeah, I know we're adverse to looking things up. Let's see what the drive is looking like right now.
It's happening in a couple days. I mean, clearly.
No, it's today.
Is it today?
Yeah.
So when is it going to get dork?
I mean, I'm looking at right now. The drive looks fine, but I guess that's because if you left now, you kind of wouldn't get there in time for the eclipse. So maybe that's why it's chill.
So is it gonna? If you're listening to this on Monday morning or afternoon, when is it gonna turn night? Is it like 3 p.m. or something?
I believe in New York City, it's at 2:40.
Oh.
So, even though I'm not a time zone aficionado, I guess it would be roughly the same time upstate. Anyway, do you have glasses? Are you like ready to rock?
Yeah, you're not supposed to look at it. You're supposed to look at it through a box, with a hole.
What was that whole deal?
I could give a fuck about this stuff. Do you remember Halley's Comet? We're dating ourselves a little bit. We were young lads at that point, but do you remember that shit? Like every school in America.
I remember hearing about it.
It was like once in a lifetime comet. I think I remember seeing it shooting through the sky, and I was like, there's like TV. I don't know. I was not really that psyched, but if we're this interested, and I understand this, I'm not trying to be a planetary hater over here, but okay, hear me out. I still might be. But if we are so enamored or fascinated or disturbed by the context of the Earth in our solar system, and to be acknowledged of the smallness of our lives, then wouldn't we be freaked out about the fact that there's aliens here? Like, how come that didn't hit harder?
Which aliens?
Like, when the government was like, okay, yes, all these conspiracy theories are kind of true. We know that there's extraterrestrial activity.
Oh, they didn't.
Well, dude, read between the lines. You're the conspiracy guy. Come on.
I'm the conspiracy guy. The government just basically said that there's stuff that we haven't been able to identify. They never said there's something from like a foreign planet. I mean, I know what you mean, and people certainly interpreted it as that. I'm just saying the government, like, I don't know, we saw some weird lights, or there's a weather balloon or some shit.
That's like when Trump is like, I'm lowering all your taxes. You're like, well, do we take him at his word? It's the government. But admitting that was huge, right? They were just like, okay, there's shit on Earth that we don't know about. You guys know, we know, we're admitting it now. I mean, we've talked about this before. Aliens were main characters in American thinking for 100 years, and then it just kind of stopped when Blink-182 got to there. Blink-182 ended a lot of shit. They ended that shit, and they ended punk pop. Respect to that band. I love that band. Greatest American band? Maybe.
When the Clips' first album dropped, Grindin', it was the single. All right, so hold on. The Eclipse thing. There was an interesting lawsuit by some prisoners in the New York State penal system who wanted to see the eclipse because of its religious value, and they had to sue the state, and I believe they won. And I'm not sure if it was only a small group of them. I think there was like 6. So they're going to be able to watch the eclipse, and they're like, this is a lifetime event, and we're really interested in experiencing it. And apparently the prison system had more or less shut everything down. I don't know if it's because it was going to be dark, so they're treating it as if it's night, like no visitors, everyone has to be in their cell. I'm like, let everyone out. But it would suck to get like shanked during the eclipse, though.
Yeah, it would suck to be killed by socks filled with soap bars.
Is that a ring of fire? No, it's a bunch of soap bars hitting you in the face.
It's a bunch of Irish Spring in a tube sock.
This is a phenomenon. No.
That's interesting, because what rights are you deprived of as a prisoner? Can you be like, listen, I really need to see Caitlin Clark play this finals game, and it's like, but you're in jail. It's like, all right, you're allowed to see this.
I would say most rights are ones that you're denied.
Yeah. What would be the one thing that you would fight for if you were like an activist for prisoner rights?
I'm not sure if they've changed the rules on how predatory phone calls are, but that's one that I would work on.
My mind immediately.
I mean that economically that they
Right.
prisoners get. You know, I think it's valuable for people who are incarcerated to be able to speak with their loved ones, and
Yeah.
the fact that they were getting rinsed with like. Oh, I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
I mean, where do you start? Where do
Working
you
for
go?
pennies a day, digging.
You went to
ditches,
phone calls
or-
first, which is interesting.
I mean, I was just
love
thinking
it.
about the many indignities that are visited upon our incarcerated friends.
I thought it was healthcare and diet. I was like, you can't feed people this stuff. You gotta feed them better food. They're not being punished with like a slow death. Their rights are taken away, but like you gotta give them like good doctors and good food. That's what I always think of. I live next to two nurses who work in, I forget what jail in New York, but they were just like, shit's intense there. They were there during COVID too. It's crazy.
Yeah, I worked in a jail for a little bit, and
Wait, tell us more about that. Where did
I was
Rick,
working
Did you work with
at-
Rick Ross?
no, I was interning for a public defender when I was younger, and
Rick Ross.
I would. No, he's on the other side.
Is he?
Yeah, he's a public. He's on the side of the. He's the hack. He was on the side of law and order. He was on the side of justice.
Sounds like he's on both sides.
I mean, he might be. Can't trust that guy at all. But yeah, I was working for the public defender, and in the mornings when everyone was getting arraigned, you'd go in there and interview them. I forget what the exact terms were. This was a long time ago. But basically, just trying to determine if someone has like the economic means to provide a lawyer for themselves, and in most cases, they do not. So you're trying to figure out if people need lawyers, and then I would go around jail in the county. It's not a prison; it's a jail, and try to find people who are in there, and I set up meetings with their lawyers. So, it was just like walking around, finding someone, and being like, Quo, I'm looking for Andrew Quo. And you'd walk around like the day room and you'd yell at people, and everyone was sleeping on bunk beds. But the one thing I really, 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 really remember is like the stench of the food. And it just smelled like hot dogs every day.
Yeah, man, it's like that level of cruelty. I think is a slow drip, but I find it to be disturbing. Is all. I don't know what I'm gonna do about it. Like potting about Jalen Brunson over here, putting his defenders in jail. But it was.
I mean, it's funny as you said, jumping to phone calls. That was just the first thing I thought of, and then you could be like, I don't know, like the solitary confinement. Routine sexual violence, like the list really is an extensive one.
Yeah, because the idea of inmate being like, "Can I see the eclipse?" and the warden being like, "Well, you are a human on Earth. Like, we can't prevent you from like breathing air or drinking water. Like, yeah, you can see the eclipse."
But I think they had to win that case on the merits of it being like a religious experience.
I like that, the religious
And they
defense.
did. And they did.
Yeah.
They did. I know some of them were Muslim at least, and they're like, this is significant in our, in our solar calendar or for our faith. And you're like, well, it's hard to deny that if we're saying this is worth driving to Rochester on a Monday morning for. Well, I guess we got to let these guys go watch the Ring of Fire.
I like it. I like it. I mean, speaking of natural occurrences, where were you when you survived the earthquake last week?
First one, the morning earthquake, the earthquake proper. That I felt. Felt that 15 seconds of wiggling.
I felt the second one, the aftershock. That was like it was post dinner time for me. So it was like, what was it, like around 6 o'clock? The sun was starting to set, and I just finished my Del Boca Vista dinner.
You had a little postprandial shimmy.
Yeah. I was like doing the dishes. I was like, another earthquake. Every time there's an earthquake in New York, that was a crazy one, by the way. When that first happened, I was like, is there an army of squirrels running all over my building, or was that everything kind of readjusting? There was one like 10 years ago that I felt that was a wave. My building went sideways for a second on that one.
See, the other one, I feel like I was in a coffee shop in like Williamsburg or something like that, and I just kind of thought it was a truck going by Bedford or something.
Yeah. Or like Linsanity all over again.
This one, I was very much of the mind that, hey, this is an actual earthquake.
Yeah, it felt like one. And if you're from LA or the West Coast or any town near a fault line, you're probably so mad that we're talking about this because, goddamn, New Yorkers know nothing about earthquakes. Yo, you guys and your earthquakes, LOL. Your ass is really showing because you're wearing Knicks chaps.
All right, here's my take on that, Andrew. I really enjoyed that we had this little shimmy. We talked about it for most of the day, cracked our jokes.
Oh, you got mad on Twitter.
Well, I was joking. I said no more earthquake content, but I posted like 5 minutes after the earthquake. That was my little joke. Then there hadn't even been any, and I said I'm sick of it already because I knew it was coming, Andrew. I knew it, but I really enjoyed that. The next day, there was a larger earthquake in San Francisco. And people were like, well, see, we had them. I was like, all right, old news, dude. No one cares. Whatever. A San Fran earthquake, that's extraordinarily boring, not newsworthy. Let's still talk about the New York City earthquake if we want. If we're going to talk earthquakes, let's talk about the one that matters.
Earthquake fatigue. 48 hours.
I thought it was kind of cool. I'm down for more.
Well, there was a week ago, there was a catastrophic one in Taiwan, which like toppled actual buildings. And
I'm less into those. I like the little trembles.
yeah, that's the thing, right? Like every time there's a natural disaster, I mean, I remember shooting my shot and missing, like Caitlin Clark style versus South Carolina. Like there was a tsunami coming or a hurricane, and I was like, ugh. Guess I'll buy some hot sauce, some Red Hot, and some tortillas. And then like dozens of people kind of like got hurt and died, and I was like, well, I really bricked that game winner. I took a chance. I took a chance.
Your girl Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was like, "See, it's time to repent." I was like, "What?" Because of like a minor tremble, because of an eclipse. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, fine, you can watch it in the yard with the rest of the prisoners.
Right. It's like if Marjorie Taylor Greene's God is punishing us for 10 seconds, then it really loves us for the rest of the year. God damn. We're just cruising.
That's what I mean. So God is whacking Asia with some earthquakes that are toppling buildings. We get a nervous twitch.
A thumbs down.
And we're supposed to say, damn.
Repent.
God is pissed.
I mean,
Literally, he disapproves of chili crisp. It's not us. We're fine.
I was gonna tie this into hot sauce gatekeeping, but golden gatekeeping. But I don't know, man. It's like I think New York has defeated LA in the city wars. I think it's been a knockout. It is Mike Tyson versus Michael Spinks. LA is a wonderful place. It's got its charm. I spent some time out there. Got people I love out there for sure. But to compare it to New York it's not doing it a service. It has to be separate. Like you cannot compare Caitlin Clark to Steph Curry. It doesn't do any of them any credit, right? The burger In-N-Out sucks. Those fries are the worst fries I've ever seen. Traffic up to Rochester sucks today. That's LA every day. Come on, Death Row Records. All right, I like the Snoop debut. That was a really good record.
Well, look, there may have been a time when people thought Los Angeles was a rival to New York. And I'm not saying that was people on this podcast, but there was sort of that perception, these two powers culturally in America. Mm-hmm. And, there's that article. It was a bit tongue-in-cheek, and it was, I can't remember if it was in the Times or New York Magazine, but maybe it was the Times. And it was about, like, New York is giving LA right now. And it kind of talked about some of the attributes of wellness in Los Angeles that had spread cross-country to here and so forth. And maybe there is a little bit of cultural osmosis in that way. Maybe we care more about astrology and crystals because of Los Angeles. They're doing more, celery juicings and so on.
Wow.
I don't get credit where it's due, perhaps. But I'm going to say this. I feel like right now, Miami has kind of surpassed LA in cultural relevance.
I am not mad at that. I thought it was going to be Atlanta for a second, but it's certainly kind of Miami, right? Like, it is so popular, Miami had to ban spring break just to discourage like 10% of people coming.
I mean, no disrespect to LA, cool city. It has a unique culture, and I think that's important. But in terms of being a rival to New York, I don't think there is one at this point in the United States. But Miami has been on the come up. I mean, I think there's just more interesting things happening there at the moment than there were in the past.
Do you mean like food-wise, club scene-wise, music?
Just across the board. Maybe it's crypto. Maybe it's just the dispersion of industries. Maybe it's the after effects of the earthquake that was the Hollywood strike. Maybe it's the fact that the boom from streaming services seems to have ebbed, and I don't know, Hollywood doesn't feel like it's popping off right now.
It does not, right? And a lot of the biggest celebrities we can think about are musicians, and that comes and goes like Smashburgers. But right now, I think the most famous people in America are musicians. And yeah, the kind of exhaustion we have with Hollywood also coincides with like MAGA people trying to use it as a political tool for the election coming up, which is like kind of like a subtle 1-2 punch. Republicans don't really care about anything unless it works in swaying middle voters. And the fact that they're doubling down on like taking down Bohemian Grove, it's like, oh, apparently the numbers show that people actually care about this stuff, which is weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange that I think Republican politics are about energizing the base, and mainstream Democratic politics are more about hedging rightward and trying to absorb a larger part of the electoral body.
It is a defensive team. The Democrats they're defensively minded.
It's weird. I can't tell which would be offense and which would be defense. Like, is trying to get, voters from the other side, would you say that is a a defensive tactic or an offensive tactic, and is buckling down and trying to get your day ones energized. Is that defensive or offense? I don't know, but I like where you're going with this.
I mean, MAGA to me feels like a volume shooter, right? When Trump goes out there and he's like, "Oh, the swamp, get rid of everyone. I might execute them." I'm like, "Yo, you are taking 25 shots a game. This is crazy."
Well, I totally agree with that part. They're the ones dictating the conversation.
Yeah.
They're saying, okay, Hollywood, they're a bunch of pedophiles. They're sipping on adrenochrome. We got to shut it all down.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Democrats being like, "You guys sound crazy." I'm just like, right. You're Dikembe Mutombo. You're just like, anything that comes at us, like, you are not going to get enough of these takes through to win an election. And we're just going to block you at every way and kind of like preventatively, like prevent offense, maybe.
And without dropping any enormous truth bombs on our dear listeners here, this is really at the heart of my personal nihilism towards American politics, is that it's become this gamified version of sports. It's like, hey, let's do some culture war stuff. Hey, they're going to do this. They're going to get rid of democracy. They're drinking adrenochrome. Like, none of this is really real issues. None of these have anything to do with making working class or poor people or even middle class lives tangibly better. It's just like, root for your team. Here's your number one foam finger, Mr. MAGA. Here's your autographed Kamala Harris poster for your wall, and let's just like argue about culture.
Yeah, I also see it as a video game thing. It's just like, well, we got to take this guy down and this idea down. Done. Where's the bigger idea? And keep on, like, until we get to the White House, until we make this a dictatorship. It's like, we got to win this game, you know? I don't know. Yeah, I agree with that.
They're good cop, bad copping us. Right. Everyone's being paid by the same special interest groups and the same corporations and the same billionaires, and we're just arguing about like who can use what bathroom.
Yeah, and this is my whole beef with sports. We talked about this last pod. Like, we debate who is a more ethical athlete. Meanwhile, Matt Ishbia, shout out to Pablo Torre, is like stealing from people who want to buy houses and then buying big toys that we only dream of, like, getting season tickets to. Like, it is frustrating. And it's sort of like when a company sends a cease and desist out for a product that they're trying to dominate the market with, and you as a community were like, we need to beat them. I'm like, no, you don't. There's no, like, game here. It is just something that maybe is, like, in poor taste, maybe is legally not successful, because I can't see that game within a game working out for them. But you don't have to take to the internet and be like, we should come together as Asians and get rid of that Asian. I'm like, what are we doing? This is not Streets of Rage 2.
This isn't Russian Attack.
This isn't Altered Beast. This isn't Ninja Turtles.
There's no way we haven't called a pod Altered Beast before.
It's happened, right? I love that game so much.
It was that was really sick. It was a Sega game, if I remember correctly.
Sega Genesis. I believe it came with the console, so you had Altered Beast. And going from 8-bit to 16-bit, it's like going from Alexei Shved to Jalen Brunson.
Dude, when Echo the Dolphin dropped.
I mean, there was some shit. But like this like my favorite moment in video games which is tied into your point, is like Super Mario for Nintendo 64. There was no clock. There was not necessarily levels, sort of like the original 8-bit Zelda. You can just wander around and like mess around. If your character didn't move for a while, it would fall asleep. That was like kind of a mind-blowing moment for me. I remember playing that game, listening to DJ Shadow when Introducing came out. Jesus Christ. And being like, yo, the world is changing. It was kind of.
I mean, it was an altered beast for sure.
Yeah, I was listening to LTJ Bukem, listening to drum and bass. I'm like, yo, my 30s are gonna be crazy.
Well, here, before we got on your altered beast tangent, which I loved, we're talking about Hollywood, and
Right.
without relitigating the controversy, and I'm using that in with quotes because I did not find it controversial, about the zone of interest that Jonathan Glazer, who we've been glazing without even seeing the movie, about his speech at the Academy Awards.
Is this about illegal NBA defense?
And no, it's about glazing.
Oh, my bad.
So,
It's
so
in
we,
the
we had
title.
we had talked about glazing and Jonathan Glazer, and but we had not seen the movie, and it just came out on HBO. I think we both watched it in the last couple of days. I really loved it. I thought it was a fantastic film.
It's a masterpiece. I don't know, man. Like, it's not Hollywood. It doesn't have any of Hollywood is a style, right? And it is sort of like Bollywood. It has its own codes. It has its own story arcs, pacing, visuals, everything. Zone of Interest about a family that lives next to behind the walls of Auschwitz in Germany during the war. Terrifying, haunting, nightmarish movie done with so much nuance and like beauty that it's confusing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was stellar, and as you said, like the settings were beautiful, and at the same time there was this, the guard towers and the walls and the barbed wire of Auschwitz
The gunshots.
and the gunshots and this kind of humming noise throughout the whole movie of like industrial generators and heaters and ovens, and they weren't even explicit about what it was all the time.
Yeah.
There were other moments when you'd see these clouds of smoke rising.
Or trains going by.
Exactly. And I thought it was a masterpiece. It was artistic, it was smart, it was heavy-handed, but while not being heavy-handed. Like it was a heavy movie that made points that were very clear, but done so, I would say, deftly.
Yeah, and to line up with one of our ongoing points, like the 90s were such a great era for minimalist movies, and Gus Van Sant, Richard Linklater, all those things, Jim Jarmusch, Wayne Wang. And this movie had so little happening to it plot-wise, and it was a lot of characters moving through spaces and these cuts and the idea of like moving from like phases of life and whatever, animals and plants changing, moving, and no spoilers. At the end, there's like a subtle moment where like the main character, who is in charge of Auschwitz, a German soldier, starts coughing, and he sees a doctor and something's wrong with him, and you're so invested in this character, you're just like, oh, is he dying? What's going to happen to his family? What's going to happen to his new opportunity with his job? And you're like, oh wait, thousands of people are getting murdered right behind that wall. Fuck, this movie's crazy.
Yeah, I agree, and that reminded me a little bit of the climactic scene from what's it called? Was it A Time to Kill? No,
Is that a James
The Act of
Bond?
Killing. The Act of Killing, which was about it was a documentary about the murders of communists in Bali, and it was interviewing people who committed those crimes and them reenacting them, which is it's a really disturbing documentary if people haven't seen it. But there's a late scene in that film where one of the primary subjects of the documentary, who has described how he killed communists, like in explicit terms, starts having this kind of like dry heave at the end. So I'm not saying he glazed that movie. I just mean there was some precedence for the sort of dry heaving, gagging ending that happened in the Zone of Interest. But yeah, I thought it was a stellar movie, and I would also say Jonathan Glazer came out of directing music videos, and his sound is always incredible. So if you have the opportunity to watch it with like the volume up and good speakers, I think that adds to the haunting nature of the film too.
Yeah, and like it kind of jumps around with time. Spoilers. There's kind of an odd climax where it's workers in the Holocaust Museum, Auschwitz, in modern time in 2020, in the 2020s, and it's kind of jarring, and it made me think of Schindler's List and The Pianist and these Oscar-winning films. All three, I believe, won Oscars, but the three different approaches to the same subject, I think, was interesting, and it got me thinking about like the death of Richard Serra, and if modernism could exist in knowing what we know, can like that level of sublime exist? And in art, I'm not sure it can. With process abstraction, it being squashed so like formidably that I feel like there's no room for this kind of presentation. And then I watch this movie and I'm like, maybe there's still a chance for like modernity.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really salient point before when you were saying about the main character's cough and how you're worried what's happened to him. I mean, when I say worried, you know this character is a Nazi.
Yes.
You know, you don't like the character, but he's the protagonist of the story.
Right.
He's evil, but he's not presented as he's not presented as anything but evil, but he is still the protagonist.
Right.
And well, I take that back. He's presented as a evil person who has the same normal concerns as regular people, and this is not a crucial spoiler, but the main plot point, as you alluded to, not being a plot-driven film, is that he's going to be transferred and then he isn't. Like, that's it. It's the most mundane, boring, bureaucratic bullshit. Oh, we're going to be transferred and I'm going to have to live away from my wife and she doesn't want to leave this house. Oh, looks like everything's going to be fine after all. Like, nothing happened. It was the idea of change occurring, and nothing happened. And it's just the things that would occur during your daily life, as you said. Meanwhile, countless thousands are obviously way more than that, but specifically over the course of this film, are on the other side of this wall, enduring, the horrors of the Holocaust.
Yeah, this part kind of annoyed me, but like also he had a point, and this was before I think he made this movie before Gaza, but a subplot of this movie was the idea of the mob, right? And I thought this idea is always interesting, and like that movie The Reader was about this. Like, are these bad people, or are these people just like doing what's expected of them within the cultural framework of their time? Like, for sure they're bad with a capital B, but the movie kind of walks that edge of just like, do you sympathize with a couple of them? Because this guy's wife is like evil, and she has that line where it's like, we'll scatter your ashes somewhere you'd love, and it's haunting. And her friend who was like, oh, I used to work for that lady, I really wanted her curtains, I love those curtains, but there was a street auction and now she's in the camp. And it's so
right, and that character was interesting. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
That character was interesting because she was the one who seemingly became disturbed as the film went on about what was occurring over there. Right. But in many ways, it was only because it disrupted her.
Right.
It was the yelling, the stench, the illumination from the ovens, and that bothered her because then she was aware of what was occurring, but it was mostly because it was an inconvenience to how she was living.
Right. And and my most cynical reading of everything of that movie is like the procedure in which we just like live. We just have families, we do this is our house, I don't want to move, I got to do my job. That job might be the most horrifying thing imaginable, but it is just my duty. And then you get Jonathan Glazer at his award acceptance speech, being like, this movie is about what's happening in the world right now, and this is not about taking sides. I sympathize with the people who are always oppressed. This is the point of the movie, which caught him a ton of flack and a ton of voices in unison signing petitions in defiance of what he said, which is kind of the point of the movie. So I thought he was doing a bit of self-promotion there as well.
Well, I mean, the notoriety of the people who came out against him was not particularly formidable.
Was it the Hulk, though? Selma Blair and the Hulk?
That's what I mean.
I like Ruffalo, man.
There was a lot of D-leaguers who came out and signed that list. Like, there's 400 names, and you look like, man, some of these guys are not big names. Come on, this is someone like works for like an agency. This is someone who's like, I don't know, like a rabbinical aide somewhere. Come on.
Hey, if you're a head coach in the NBA, you better not say anything scandalous. You got to where you got.
What I mean is, he was on the right side of history. He made a great artwork. It's relevant to what's occurring right now. He made a heartfelt, thoughtful speech that people intentionally misinterpreted and attempted to say was a refutation of his faith. He came out looking pretty good, on all things considered. Like, the people who aligned against him were not a particularly notable or respectable crew.
And yeah, and not to like diminish someone who's like a successful DP or like audio engineer, but like, this is where I become, did you watch the games, bro? That army? Because I'm like, oh, his movie is like, his words, however you agree or disagree with his words, they take a different kind of context when you watch his movie, and you're like, oh damn, this guy dedicated his last few years, I don't know how long, when the inception of this movie came in his brain, but like, this thing kind of is the blueprint of what he's saying. Just gotta watch the movie, which is annoying.
Well, of course. He makes this powerful film specifically about the Holocaust, and I saw one of the critics, like, I don't know if they'd seen the film or not. Like, maybe they'd watched it, but it was this incredible whiff where the writer criticizing Jonathan Glazer, he was not glazing, said, like, a movie about the Holocaust with no Jews? Like, whoa, you just didn't get the point at all.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't, like, you, like, just a big swing and a miss on that one.
I like, apparently J. Cole did something embarrassing yesterday, and I want to make fun of him, but I have not heard any of his songs. I will not hear any of his songs. So, like, respect to that mistake, because I make it all the time.
So my understanding of the J. Cole scenario is simply that he made a song that I have not heard that was a response to Kendrick saying that there's no such thing as a big three, it's just me, that I would not have caught because I don't care about any of these guys that much. But it was explained to me via social media that this was an insult to J. Cole and Drake. So J. Cole made a song, and I did not listen to it because, come on.
What's called Might Delete Later, or was that just the JPEG attached to the song?
That's a joke, because I guess last night he was on stage and he's like, after writing that song and putting it out, I haven't been able to sleep.
Nah.
Tossing, I'm turning. You know, I love this guy. What am I doing with myself? You know, my soul is not right with this weakly regarded diss song that I put out that was pretty much praising him for the most part. An audio hagiography that I'm going to present as a diss song. But he said his soul wasn't right with this, so he's going to take it off of streaming platforms. And I was like, no. It's like, don't do it. No.
I love that people are fighting with words that rhyme over music, It's incredible. If we step back a little bit, like sandwiches are for children. The NBA is marketed for children. Like, oh, music is like in art form. This is my whole, or many people's whole things, like how evil or dark can you be when you're tuning guitars and like, or in a studio like trying to rhyme words together. It's amazing. Like, this is what we're doing, right? And this whole beef lacked a lot of tension that a lot of other beefs, successful beefs, have, which are like truly mean or truly scary. This one was just kind of like two guys, in a way, pumping each other up. And when J. Cole allegedly, I didn't hear it, was just like, yo, I respect Kendrick. Like, we know this was gonna end this way. Fine. There was a clip of.
I'm not sure that the respect is totally mutual from Kendrick towards him, because J. Cole just kind of caught a stray, and it was just because he had said we're the big three. I felt as if Kendrick's criticisms or his barbs that were coded enough that I would not, again, have been able to understand who he was talking about were directed towards Drake, I guess. So J. Cole jumping in and being like, this is about me too. I saw one of the responses from a Top Dog Entertainment. I think that's what it's called, right? TDE, from Kendrick's, inner circle, was just like tweeted LOL. That's like nice.
Yeah.
Like not even uppercase. He just got a lowercase LOL as a response to J. Cole walking back his diss song and then trying to extend an olive branch that was apparently not accepted.
Man, we're so onto this shit, right? Like, I guess there was a response. There was like a post that Beyonce has another number one, but it's on the country charts, and she is just a legendary artist. So I was like, let me see the comments to this hype beast post, and everyone's like, who cares? Have you heard the album? I have not heard it. What chart is she talking about? It's like, are they just saying this stuff? It's like, is it good? We're on to it, and like, J. Cole fans are old now, and we're even older, but like, I feel like that was a weird missing. There's a gap in my memory when him and Big Sean got big. It was kind of during the Warriors run, where it was like this hazy cultural moment where we're like, are we advancing, or is this just kind of like a death cry before what we actually have to deal with? Is this just like someone moments before they flatline?
Is this about the Baffler article? Is that where you're gently prodding this perfect pod?
Let's go. I mean, how many people still read the Baffler? I don't. But how many people care?
Kind of like the J. Cole of local literary magazine. No, it's not, because people apparently listen to J. Cole, but we don't. I don't know. Disregard that one.
There's a scene for the Baffler. The Drift is getting some shine. Like, is N+1 still active?
I believe so, but I'm also could be wrong. I've met the guy who started the Baffler one time, and
It's been going since the 90s.
I mean, maybe he's the editor now.
Yo, those
Is this
parties are
starting it?
crazy. Those Baffler media parties. Damn. You got J. Cole in the corner, Big Sean in the other corner, maybe Kendrick around.
We've got to get to these media parties.
Oh my God, those N+1 parties. I've DJ'd some N+1 parties.
Tokion.
Certainly. Oh, that was before my time working as sound entertainment, but I was close to a lot of those Tokion guys. That's sweet. I want to quickly get into. I watch every episode of Tokyo Vice. Woo! I did it, so you don't have to. Damn.
You watch a lot of bullshit.
I watch everything because I like watching stuff. I watch all of it. For every zone of interest, there's a Shogun in my life.
You recommended The Tourist. I tried to watch it. I'm like, this sucks. Come on, Andrew.
Oh, I still like that. Did you like Fleabag though?
I didn't watch that either. I heard that was good.
It's the same like producers, so like it has that feel to it. If you're not into like the feel of Better Call Saul, everything in that world is kind of annoying. So
Right.
yeah, this was that, but I'm enjoying whatever. I'm watching the tours because I'm out of stuff to watch. But quickly about Shogun and Tokyo
Or do you
Vice.
want to go back to the Baffler?
I could do that. This has a Tokyon related thing to it, but not a Baffler. Okay, do you want to talk Japan or do you want to talk about video artists?
I wanted to get your take on the Baffler article because I didn't read it. So I really wanted to hear you explain to me in words that I can understand, and then perhaps, you know, at a bar over a beverage, I can then pretend that I've read it and I can talk about it with people, you know, in the zeitgeist.
All right, because my feed is in a bind about this article. Came out a few days ago. It's titled "It's Not What the World Needs Right Now." It's written by Andrew Norman Wilson, who is kind of a good video artist. I was not like very aware at all of his work until this article, and I looked at it. It's like fucking awesome. He shows at institutions. His CV is as impressive as any working artist, but he writes about the struggles of existing as an artist within the system of institutions and the art market, and how he's poor and he dog sits and he had to take care of these tortoises and one died, and he is in and out of non-relationships. He might be an incel, he claims himself, and the series of disappointments throughout his whole decade that's led up to his decision that he's going to leave this scene entirely and just like work for Oneohtrix Point Never, Balenciaga, which he's doing now, and just like leave behind the dreams of making substantive work and going commercial. And a lot of the response on my Twitter feed was like, it is over. We have not been able to cross that bridge and make artwork something new. We are the victims of the slow death and the actual death of the creative corner that we occupy, and it's taken over by money, AI, street art, bad art, 5 power players that dictate where the wealth is distributed within this small micro world. Of course, I have an annoying take on it, which is,
I would expect no less.
come on, man. I'm sitting there in the SVA theater months ago, watching Cookie's friend of the pod, Kela Fasene, interview David Byrne. He's talking about the 80s and the 70s and what New York was like and what it was like to make art then, and was it as robust as the mythology would suggest. And David Byrne was like, yeah, but I wasn't really part of that. I'm not a punk. I'm kind of an art school guy. I'm into dance. I'm into world music. I wasn't like crusty. And as the talk progressed, David Byrne is beloved by many. I'm not one of them, but he is kind of like a low-key hater. People know this. Not that supportive. Kind of thinks he is the main character and everything ended with him. But got famous for songs with lyrics like Same As It Ever Was, right? Mm-hmm. So he was claiming that like digital streaming ruined everything. Musicians cannot make money. Major labels cannot figure out how to support their artists. It is new and it is over. And Kay's point was like, but wasn't this the case when you were making music? Did all of your friends get record deals? It's like, no, we were kind of the only ones. And he's like, but it sounds the same. And when the response of this article comes out in the Baffler, it makes me think that we are doing a traditional thing and our brains are curing and maturing like every other brain does, which is we are the ones to witness the end, and everything that happens after is not valid. You may try to be Michael Jordan, but you're only LeBron James.
Well, this is a bit like Ben Solomon was saying on Throwing Fits. And he made a good point about no one was ever in the real New York because you always just came of age or just arrived here right after it was at its best. Like everyone's just been off by a little bit. There's
Winners
always
write the
something to tell
history,
you.
right?
But there's always something to tell you that it was better right before you got there. It was realer. It was more artistic and genuine or fun. You just missed it. Like if you had only gotten there 3 years earlier, you would have really understood the real New York, but you just didn't.
Right. And this article is interesting because it's kind of clear this Andrew Norman Wilson is like depressed on like a DNA level. Not like sad that he's broke, but he's just like a sad guy. And you pull the things you want to pull out of a long article like this that kind of like helps you along in what you're thinking already. And to think that, we're over art stardom and we're over the idea of artists being creative people is just an agenda that I love to talk about. Because and I think about when I brought up Richard Serra and process abstraction and modernism, or reducing something to like the sublime, the visceral. Like we had that in the early aughts, right? Kind of when indie sleaze was happening, we had this phenomena in the art world that we call a certain phrase, but it's abstract expressionism done through new tools, and it took over the market, made many people very rich, and was immediately...
Are you getting at zombie formalism here?
We don't have to say that. Shout out to Walter Robinson, who's amazing, who coined that phrase. But it was quickly crushed, and those artists now either aren't really making that kind of work or just not making work, period. And that work was meant to piss people off, and it had a historical context, and it was weird, not in that the imagery was weird. We understood the imagery, but the whole thing made people so angry. I'm like, well, this is what art is. Then came a wave of figuration, highly skilled technical painting, and the army of outrage went away. And everyone's like, well, this is real art. This is about identity politics, and this painting looked like it took months to make with oils and tears and blood. So this is definitely worth the money. I'm like, we get what we ask for. If we can't be patient with weird things, then we're not going to get weird things.
I like this point. I think that's correct. And, our book talks about this within the context of basketball and the joy around the sport. And this kind of takes us to actually discussing said sport. Because women's basketball has definitely been on the upswing, both in the WNBA and the college ranks. We've had the rise of real stars, of a lot more eyeballs, people caring and talking about the biggest games they have. That's whether it's the WNBA finals, which had the Liberty in Las Vegas in it last year, or the women's final that happened yesterday with Caitlin Clark and Iowa going against South Carolina with Dawn Staley and her team that has, I think, won 100 games and lost 3 or whatever it is over the last couple seasons. And they were undefeated. But with that comes idiocy. With the idea that
with great
we are
power
now
comes
going to
great
take...
stupidity. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We are going to take women's basketball seriously. We are going to pay attention to it. We're going to analyze it. And we're going to do all the same dumb shit that we do with men's basketball. So, be careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm. This is the double-edged sword we were talking about last week. How do you show respect and interest and love for something? Is it enough to be like, can't we just enjoy these world-class athletes performing on this level and just bask in the glow of this moment? I'm like, yes. But if weirdos want to start going into bench scoring, Iowa scored 0 bench points yesterday. I believe South Carolina had over 30 bench points. It comes down to are we interested or not? Because Yes, I loved watching that game. My heart was pounding. I was smiling. Now can I turn to the other person and talk about like shot selection? It's like, nope, you're not allowed to criticize it. I'm like, I get that. So it's both things. But I think the real respect comes from investing time and like nuance into it.
I agree. And we're seeing fledgling interest in women's basketball, and some of it's driven by the stars. Some of it's driven by, well, most of it's probably driven by the stars. Women's basketball is flourishing because there is a current crop of players who are really exciting, and they're mixing in kind of the innovations of Steph Curry or Kyrie in terms of ball
like
handling,
Kyrie.
long distance shooting. I mean, Kyrie is every guard's favorite player. He just is. Like every young person who has grown up and is a ball handler, it's Kyrie. You watch his clips, you learn his moves, you try to do the best that you can to like learn.
It's
how to be
Curry
like
and Kyrie, I think. It's
Yeah.
the combination of both of them.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah. But on a visceral level, that was an incredible game. I thought Caitlin Clark, man, I kind of wanted to talk about this. Those words that Dawn Staley said after the game kind of like made me emotional. It was awesome, right? But why did that make me emotional? When she said that, like, yo, shout out to Caitlin Clark. She carried this whole league on her shoulders, and she just basically ran out of talent, right? Like, we're the better team. Dawn Staley knows this. Like, I'm fucking undefeated over here. We had her. They jumped out to a big lead, and we made adjustments, and we crushed them. It was light work. It was so light that she came out of the game before the clock ran down in order to get her respect.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark, one of the goats, and yes, the eyeballs she has attracted to women's college basketball and women's basketball at large, really crucial to the sport. But you're right, Dawn Staley's like, hey, respect for that. We held you to 10 for 28, and like that was not that difficult.
Yeah, and
We spotted you a 15-4 lead, and then beat your ass. We clamped you.
And this wasn't Marquez talking about Pacquiao. This wasn't Dawn Staley looking at like a dead body and being like, that's the best opponent we've ever had, and I just dominated them. I think it was Dawn Staley being like, guys, this is kind of like a cultural moment for us, and the player we just beat is the culture. Like, she's going to take this with her to the next level, and like, we should feel a nuance for what she's experiencing right now.
And there were some interesting undertones and the way that Iowa seemed like was going to benefit from refereeing with, in mostly because of Caitlin's stardom in comparison to other women college players. And there's a few calls she got, and you kind of see Dawn Staley rolling her eyes on the sidelines. And this is something that they've thought about.
Yo,
And,
it's all Shohei Ohtani's world, man. We're just getting woke to it now.
I mean, you've been food woke, but
Hot sauce woke.
let's just talk for a second about that late moving screen call in the UConn Iowa game. I'm not getting conspiratorial here. I just want to talk about that play because it was interesting. And even though that was the prior game, it was last possession. UConn had the ball. They were down by 1. And they were trying to get the rock into the hands of Paige Breckers, their superstar, get her a final shot at going to the Final Four. A moving screen was called at this, incredibly crucial moment. I mean, a few things happened after that, but it really was kind of the end of the game for the most part. Got a lot of scorn, but then a lot of people also defended the call. Like, where did you stand on the spectrum of scorn or defense?
Well, it kind of transformed, right? At first, everyone's like, that was not an illegal screen, and you can't call that at a big moment like that. And then another angle came out and we're like, okay, that was definitely a moving screen, which I agree with. That is indeed an offensive foul, but you can't take the moment away from Beckers, right? Like, are we not here to be entertained? Do the refs want to be main characters? And it finally ended at a debate between what is allowed to be called in certain situations, in sort of ways, in the same ways we police or people on the internet are policing the way we talk about the women's tournament. It's like, what kind of language are male analysts allowed to use? Because we've been assholes for entire civilization long period of time, right? Like, there is stupid people, myself included, talking about things that do not need my fucking voice, right? But like, I really enjoy.
Whoa! Don't sell yourself short.
Right. I mean, but this is
Some topics that I think need your voice are chili crisp lawsuits, eclipses, the New York earthquake,
Sandwich
zone of
eating.
interest for sure, the Baffler article, women's basketball,
we didn't
moving
get to 14th
screens.
Street. Yeah. Oof.
These are some topics that require voices not only from you, Andrew, but also from me.
I mean, this happened with Amin Al Hassan, right? He throws up an air ball and everyone's like, he's not allowed to talk about the game. We've been doing this forever. It's like, who's allowed to talk about what? And are the refs allowed to dictate, to talk about what we want? Yes,
Well,
they are.
Here's my take on it, because it's not new and I don't think it's that novel. I just feel like getting this take off. Is that, yeah, it was a moving screen. She stuck out her leg. She impeded the defensive player, gave her a little chicken wing, kind of moved his shoulder. Yes, a foul is a foul whenever it occurs. Like, just literally speaking, we know that.
Yep.
My only take is that I think we have a precedent that goes back to decades. MJ, Reggie Miller, Draymond and Steph. We're Kobe, going back decades, that the game is reffed differently on final plays. That, like, you can do more. It's ref more loosely. That you have to be really egregious if you say hold somebody or tug a jersey or push off or set a moving screen, only because there is this idea that the players should determine it on the court and the refs are going to swallow that whistle on those plays. And I think there is an understanding at every level that if on the last play of the game, you're probably not going to get whistled for a moving screen unless it's fucking crazy. And I don't know that moving screen met the threshold of that's just so egregious.
I know.
You're changing the game.
But
like that, and so
when
I
it
think
happens, you can't
No.
deny it, right?
No,
You
I
just
agree.
hope
I'm saying,
they
yes.
don't call it.
right. That's what I mean. I think if you do a moving screen, you take the risk that this is going to happen, and you will cost your team the game. I just think that there is kind of a collective basketball understanding that you can do more, and it's like play through it on that last 3 seconds of the game, that last 10 seconds, whatever it is, and that the ref is the one who kind of violated the social contract here a bit. But that doesn't mean they're wrong. They just made a decision that most refs don't make. And it's kind of like the same thing as if, your city has open container laws. So if you're walking around with a beer all the time, you're going to get a ticket for it. But on, say, New Year's Eve, they let everyone go around, and you can, that one moment, everyone can have a brew dog in the street, and somehow you end up getting arrested, and you go to jail, and it messes up your New Year's. You lose your job because you can't show up, and it's like, what the fuck, man? I was just drinking a beer in the street. It's like, yeah, but it's against the law.
Right. And this is why we have collective outrage as a whole country, when it's like, why are you picking on me for this moving screen? When moving screens happen all the time and you're not calling moving screens on anybody, but I'm UConn. Do you just hate me? I mean, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't think that should have been called because I didn't think it was that egregious. I thought it was a moving screen, but I do think, yeah, the refs got to let that moment breathe, personally.
I mean, when Beckers didn't get a shot, I was like, that sucks.
Exactly. No, that's what I mean. Like, that sucked.
Yeah. It's like, that would have been fucking crazy. And I don't know. Afterwards, Dinah Taurasi said that her opinion, stated her opinion about, like, I think Superbird was like, who would you take, Beckers or Caitlin Clark? And she was like, Beckers, no comment. And that made news because Taurasi is amazing and funny and not for hyperbole. And maybe the GOAT before the GOAT. There's many GOATs now. But also, she was mad because that moving screen call, came against her team, UConn, right? So obviously she's going to be like, well, fuck Caitlin Clark, man. She didn't get here on her own. She had to have help. So I watched the Bird Taurasi feed for the finals game. They were not impressed with Caitlin Clark. I mean, they said the superlatives and they had guests, and somehow Jason Sudeikis is all over my TV. I don't know why, but he was sitting with them, and Snoop Dogg was around. But Caitlin Clark was shooting some shots, and they were looking at each other like laughing, rolling their eyes. They're like, "That's why you're behind points. Like, take better shots, get your teammates involved. Like, you're gonna lose this game." And to be honest, it wasn't much of a game after halftime.
I mean, very, very fun early on. The Iowa run to start the game, then South Carolina having a run of their own, knocking down some threes, crushing them on the boards to turn it into like an extremely close game at the half. Really, really was fun. And yeah, I thought the offensive rebounding and defense of South Carolina just broke Iowa in that third quarter. And as you said, Caitlin Clark started and she was fuego, but she ended the game 10 of 28 and that
forcing
30
shots.
points.
Yeah.
And that's not a great game, but also she had 14 in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So basically for the remaining 35 minutes of the game, she was pretty much held in check.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of like...
Not pretty much, she was.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Good defense, good stunting by Dawn Staley, sending defenders at her, sending size at her. They Tim Duncan'd South Carolina. South Carolina Tim Duncan'd Iowa, right? They did it with, like, verticality, spacing, and size. It wasn't heroics. It was just, like, an unbeatable plan. Like, those ground and pound guys from Ultimate Fighting, like, it's not fun to watch, but no one's beaten that. And we just all
a lot of size, a lot of athleticism,
a
lot of arms in the face.
Yeah, and that's why I got
it was they game planned her really well.
Amazing coaching. It was incredible that you mentioned Dawn Staley first when mentioning South Carolina, because the coaching imprint was all over that game, her coaching imprint. But Mulkey not making adjustments, weird too. But I got in my feelings when Dawn Staley was talking about Caitlin Clark, not because of like the moment or the GOAT talk or what she had done. I think Caitlin Clark is like a deeply relatable athlete. Not only because she's smaller than some of her opponents, but her story and what she's trying to do is kind of like Herculean in this weird way, where she still seems like the underdog. She's from a small school. She's not playing for UConn. She's like this spry white girl. And she's like a tornado. She's an offensive force. And I think that really captures my imagination when she's like draining 30-foot jumpers, which is like, I talked about the sublime in painting, like that, nothing gets better than that. And when that ball goes in and it swishes, I'm just like, yo, she is a kind of athlete that is not only deeply relatable, but like what I want, like Jeremy Lin kind of.
I mean, she's also an extremely good passer, and
she's good.
She is reckless. We were talking about this before the pod, and you brought up like that she turns the ball over a ton. And we'll see if that may not continue at the next level, but it's weird when we kind of think about her, and that kind of incredible long distance shooting we've seen it in the NBA from a few people on the male side. Women's side, there have been very good shooters, but no one who can do the things that she does. I mean, she just pulls from the logo.
It's an awesome looking shot.
It's awesome. It feels like a magic trick.
Yep.
It doesn't seem real, and there's this feeling of it goes up and you're like, there's no way. It's like splash. It creates this sense of wonder that Curry did, and I think that's why, as you said, she's relatable, but there's also a magic trick.
Yep.
It's like, how does she do this? When you see Cardoza grab boards and put them back, there's not a magic trick to that.
She's just big. If I was big, I could do that. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, she's good. This is not taking anything away from her. It's just, you get it. But when Caitlin Clark is out there, this, kind of mousy white chick who kind of looks like Rick Owens is firing up 40-footers that are just hitting net, it captures the imagination.
And when she's that emotional in her feelings, when she takes a loss on the court so hard, what's not to love there? But this is where I get weird about thinking about and enjoying what I'm watching, because as this game was kind of falling out of hand, I was like furiously like Googling, like, is she the greatest of all time? And the last great player I can remember was Breanna Stewart. She won 4 in a row. And I was curious. I'm like, am I imagining that? Because it felt like when Gino Auriemma was going to break the coaching record and that Stewie-led team won 4 in a row, it felt like that was a huge women's college basketball moment too. Like, we were all watching, tweeting about that as well. Breanna Stewart doesn't capture the imagination in the same ways that you were talking about, and I agree. But statistically, she was the better player, and she won 4 straight championships. She's the GOAT, right?
I mean, is it her? Is it Cheryl Miller? I mean,
The era's weird, right? Is it Diana Taurasi? Not statistically, but like, is it Sue Bird? Like,
is it Cheryl Swoops? Is it Rebecca Lopez? Rebecca Lobo, excuse me.
Liberty, #1 overall history in their franchise history. But there was golden ages of this sport before now. And I think Beckers, Juju, and now that Caitlin Clark is gone, like, that's certainly a moment. But like the Sabrina, kind of Breanna years, I think AJ Wilson, I don't know. Brittany Griner was like we were tuning into Brittany Griner for sure.
But not like this.
Are we sure? I mean, I think this was
ratings,
awesome.
The ratings were bonkers on these.
Look at you glazing for ratings now. I mean,
the
like,
ratings glazer has logged on.
I mean,
no, I don't. I'm not
then,
someone who I don't care about NBA ratings. I never look.
Oh,
People say
doesn't
like,
sound like it. No,
no,
go on.
The NBA ratings. No, people were like, oh, why aren't more people watching? It's bad for the NBA. I'm like, who gives a shit? But the sport's a sport. But for women's basketball, I'm only using that as a metric for people paying attention and interest.
I have a theory behind that, though.
Let's hear your theory. I would just say that Caitlin Clark has certainly contributed to that over the last couple of years, and in a way that, like, I don't know, my dad's watching the women's final. He definitely was not 3 years ago.
1,000%. Caitlin Clark is what Dawn Staley said. She carried the league on her shoulders and brought it to the next level. Incredible, right? But like, my theory is certain people who aren't committed to watching sports, let alone college basketball, let alone women's college basketball, will find a way to watch a moment in order to participate in culture, and not necessarily like go to Russian sites or like watch it in roundabout ways that don't like get clicks on Nielsen ratings or whatever. They're gonna find a way to like get Hulu Plus, find a way to get like Peacock and pay for it and register those numbers, because NBA heads, and there's a volume more of them, NBA heads kind of can figure a way around everything, especially with like logging in IP addresses and not really being seen. There's a thievery there for people who want there to be.
This is true. I agree with that. But I think it's also true that people will tune in to watch this moment and then not necessarily follow up on it. But in the kind of concept of whatever, a rising tide, it's like, which, as Dawn Staley was kind of remarking on, is that interest now has extended towards whether it's Angel Reese or whether it's to Juju, and introduced new characters in this, extended women's basketball universe, that now with Caitlin Clark going to the WNBA and being the first pick in the draft and playing in Indiana, there's going to be interest in that. And Angel's going, and they're going to play again. And, now they're going to be going up against players that more fans have been introduced to over the last couple of years, whether it's for the Liberty or whether it's for Las Vegas. And we'll see. I don't think it's going to rocket the WNBA to like some wild level of popularity or profitability. But I think we can say that I think this is more than just a blip because of the talent of the players. And a lot of that goes back to what we were just talking about, like Curry and Kyrie creating a new model for NBA stardom, which was not the lumbering center, was not someone who was trying to just jam. Mm-hmm. And it was not based solely on, being enormous and this incredible athlete, but was based on shooting and ball handling and footwork and being crafty and smart. And you see these new players on all these teams that we've seen, whether it's LSU or South Carolina. And the skill level and fluidity is just in a place where it was not a few years ago.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. Like, shoot.
I'm really thinking from like guard play,
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I mean, super. I don't know. My question is for myself mostly. We were mentioning all these players. Like, I know Alyssa Thomas, Jackie Young, I don't know, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum. Shout out to like the aces, AJ Wilson, obviously. But like, sometimes I feel like I'm saying the word gyro correctly, or like I walk into a bodega and the guy's like, "Ni hao ma," and I'm like, "Oh, thank you," but I feel kind of weird about that. It's fine, totally fine. I like being treated with respect and being people being nice to me. That's good. I don't want to be that cynical. But is it like me going to Paris and being like, bonjour, and they're like, hello? I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here. I kind of get a feeling when I talk about the WNBA that I have when I go to a foreign country and I try to assimilate too quickly.
I get that, and I don't think it's going to soar in popularity, and all of a sudden we're going to be having tons of conversations about whether, like, we think, I don't know, Fulwiley is getting enough touches. But it'll happen. It'll happen within circles. I don't mean it's going to happen like down the line. Everyone will be talking about Fulwiley on South Carolina getting more touches. I mean, people will be talking about these, and shout out to guys like Nikias Duncan who have been, and there's one that's like,
he's awesome. Yeah.
There's another stat site. I forget what it's called, but they've been pushing to try to get more analytics for women's basketball available.
It's hard. I've been looking. Yeah, there's not a lot.
Yeah, Sports Reference has it for college. The WNBA site, not great with it. And,
dude, the Yahoo site doesn't have shots attempted.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And this is not new, and they need to get on that, because I want to say maybe 7 years ago or so, I wrote a New Yorker article for like their sporting section. I forget what it was called, like the Sporting Life or something like that, about the difficulty in getting advanced metrics for WNBA teams and players and fans in comparison to the way that the NBA has really pushed it forward with making those kind of numbers and metrics available to the public. And I mean, that was like the whole premise of the story. And it was talking to women players and about how they want more, but it just really wasn't available. But that said, I remember, Caitlin Clark talking about, I think, second spectrum numbers. So like there clearly is,
for sure,
an improvement in that vicinity.
Especially when gambling is common for them, when the popularity increases. And I hear people say like the subcultures within basketball, WNBA, are dictated by like Moneyball, like economists, Bill Simmons, and all that. And people don't mention Basketball Reference enough. I think that changed the entire actual NBA league and front offices and all that. And when I said Breanna Stewart has better stats than Caitlin Clark, I wasn't talking about points or assists. The first things people see, it's just like, well, Caitlin Clark averaged so many more points and assists. Like, she is not only as good, she's probably better. But if you ignore blocks and turnovers, which are not fun to think about, and you scroll down to advanced metrics, like Breanna Stewart has Caitlin Clark in like almost across the board, except for scoring and assists and like foul shooting.
Well, like switching over kind of towards NBA.
Oof, thank God. Bonjour.
Well, I was going to say.
Well,
Well, I was going to say with Caitlin Clark, you brought this up when we were talking yesterday about instead of Steph Curry, is she Dame Lillard? Is she Trae Young?
Right. Is she? Hall of Famer. Lillard is a Hall of Famer. But I was watching her play this month, and I was like, is she Dame as opposed to a GOAT?
Right. We'll see. And
yeah, exactly.
But
she has no
there are any
championships.
number of people.
I mean, can we talk about ring hunting or ring counting for a second? Because we go back and forth with this. We wrote a book, and in it we talked about like how championships are a statistic, but they're also a team statistic, and it's hard to attribute Michael Jordan's 6 for 6 as like a pure stat, as a standalone individual accomplishment. She needed to win that one yesterday, and like that's what a lot of other players were saying. It's like former players, like if she is indeed the GOAT and that's on the table, she had to beat South Carolina because she needs 1. Some of these players have 4.
I mean, this is true. I get that. I also think like she took Iowa to back-to-back.
Huge.
Championship games. It's
Heroic.
really impressive.
Heroic.
It's not she did really well. Like they came up short against LSU in a fairly close game that ended up being not close by the end, and it was kind of the same
10
as
for 28
South Carolina.
That's not. That's not doing well.
That's not GOAT behavior, right? I'm with you. I just mean, while understanding that sort of, she didn't hit her resume with the check mark like college champion. Like if you're going to be the GOAT, like an MJ, like you got to have won a title in college. Check it off.
I hate to say
She's not gonna. She doesn't have that. But I'm also just saying, I'm glazing a little bit here. Like she did take Iowa, that was not that great of a squad, to 2 championship games, which is really impressive.
I was looking at those UConn squads recently of their most recent success. Not a ton of WNBA superstars except for Breanna Stewart, who's the MVP and has won WNBA championships. I'm just like, is she not discussed as the GOAT because she's tall and kind of like a lumbering player?
I mean, she's more of a Tim Duncan for sure, even though she can shoot threes. I mean, Breanna Stewart's the full package. I'm not sure she's the best player in the WNBA right now, but she's up there.
Oh, AJ Wilson. But are we sure she's not?
I mean,
She was in the finals.
She's up there.
Yeah.
She's great.
They lost because she kind of had a tough finals, right?
Yeah, she didn't really excel. She's an amazing player for sure.
Anyway, yeah. I don't know. I thought the idea of ring counting kind of overlapping to Caitlin Clark was interesting.
Well, what's fun about her is that this story is only kind of getting started, that this is one chapter, and it does have this tension where we can say she's the GOAT college player, and so we can say, yeah, but couldn't get it done in the big game. And we
I
say,
hate it, but
okay, Okay, well, no, these make her compelling, and as we said when we led into this incredible segment that we've gifted to our listeners, is like with great power comes great idiocy.
Yeah, I mean,
You want to take the women's game to a next level? We got some hot takes.
and I hate to be that guy, but like,
Love
think-
being that guy.
I do. I think Joel Embiid is a Hall of Famer. I think he is probably one of the best centers I've ever seen. He needs to start winning some rounds in the playoffs. Like the sample size is getting large, right?
I
in
agree.
the playoffs. And like if Luka doesn't start winning rounds in the playoffs, like he's gonna suffer a Lillard fate. Jokic winning like changed the entire narrative of what he was because
I mean, and look at Giannis. Exact same thing. Giannis had not really been able to make a deep run, particularly, or at least not to the finals.
Yeah.
A lot of early round exits,
Yeah.
but it happened one year. They they got that little touch of lightning and lucked out against Brooklyn with some injuries and a toe on the line, and all of a sudden, Giannis is a made man.
Dirk Nowitzki, right? And like, stats is championships is a stat, and it is a noisy stat. It is not really that descriptive. But when you're a 1A and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 11 championships, like you have to consider era, you have to consider strength of opposition. But it is what it is, right? Like Jokic got it.
Well, let's talk about Embiid for a second, just because you brought him up. So
For sure.
he's made his return. He's looked good. I mean, I wouldn't say he's been
Love the
on
love the
par
hair. Yeah,
he was before. Yeah, he looks good.
he looks
Hair
awesome.
great.
I'm very excited to see him back.
And Philly right now, just to give the lay of the land, they are currently sitting in the 7th spot, which means that they would be in the play-in. So they're one game behind Indiana, who currently, and I guess and going forward, will have the tiebreaker over them. There's nothing Philly can do about that because they lost the season series to Indiana. So they would have to actually beat them in order to get they'd have to have a better record, is what I mean. But Philly has a really easy schedule, like cartoonishly easy down the stretch. They have 3 more games, and it's Detroit, Orlando, who's pretty good, and Grizzlies, and Nets. And they've just beaten the Grizzlies and Spurs. So really the dregs of the league outside of Orlando were 4 of their last 5 games. Mm-hmm. So Philly has now won 5 in a row. Embiid being back for excuse me, being back for 3 of those games. They're in a pretty good spot.
How the turntables, man. Like 3 weeks ago I was talking about how like it is tough to be a Philadelphia 76ers fan right now. Like the hope is lost in the present and possibly in the future. How much Joel Embiid matters is so incredible because I did not expect him to.
One new Bullies shirt drops, and yet again, the worm turns.
And New York loses Randall for the season, and we'll talk about that later. But you do not want to play Philadelphia in the playoffs, and this is where the more people who are convinced that the top seed should be able to choose their opponents, like, have agency. Because
I mean, I could not agree more. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the Boston Celtics who did the job this season. They took care of business. They deserve to breeze through the first and second rounds, and they should be able to pick like the Hawks if they make it, or even the Magic or the Cavs. Respect to those teams are really good, but Philly is annoying, and I still think they probably beat them, but like that is not a winner's prize.
Well, the way that it appears right now, and look, anything can happen when you get into that plan. But there's a reasonable chance that Boston has to play Miami or Philly in the first round.
Yeah, that sucks for them. I mean, great for us, but
it also sucks for Milwaukee.
yeah, yep.
But less sympathy for them because Boston has a 15-game lead on Milwaukee. So right, you You post a 60-win season, and then you're like, okay, you get Joel Embiid, the team that blew a 3-2 lead against you last year in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, is this team, as it is, you as a Sixers expert, how does this team compare to last year's squad going into the playoffs?
I think, as we saw with Doc Rivers' inability to have the team multifaceted as an offensive attack, to not really take advantage of having James Harden, except for the games when Joel was sitting out. To swap him out for Nick Nurse, I think matters, but I don't know if it matters enough to say they will now beat them. I don't know if it matters enough to say that counteracts James Harden as an offensive facilitator no longer being in the mix. But I do like some of the new additions. I think Lowry was a good pickup. Bringing in Buddy off the bench as a shooter helps a lot. I'm going to say the most annoying thing that everyone also says is, like, if Nick Nurse has the gumption to sit Tobias Harris, I will ride with this team and say, hey, if they win or lose, that's what you got to do. If we watch them play and Tobias is out there gumming up the offense, being slow to make decisions on defense, then we're just repeating the sins of the Doc father.
I mean, no PJ Tucker amounts to something, right? Like, I think taking him off the court is interesting.
Yeah, no, I think having Heald and Oubre and more athleticism and more shooting, Lowry being out there, Batum.
Less defense.
It's too bad Covington isn't around, because he was a nice fit for Embiid and Maxey as a 3-and-D guy. I'm not sure if he's going to come back this season or not. I have no clue. But Batum has been a nice addition, and same with Lowry. At least you have two guys who are higher IQ basketball players to put within this collection of otherwise mindless chuckers.
Yeah.
They're so old.
So old. But I love all those players. Yeah, I'm excited. I don't think the playoffs have started, but I'm looking forward to a lot of the stories, man. This is going to be fun. This week.
Well, and also, I mean, Philly's had Melton and Covington out for this just enormous amount of time, and those are two of
Is Melton
who
coming back?
would be their better defenders. I'm not sure. I don't think that anything's been decided either way.
Yeah.
I mean, Melton has a spine injury, and he hasn't played since, February.
Not good. Just not good. This is an annoying question. I'm just being annoying this whole episode, but perfectly annoying. Perfectly annoying.
Very annoying, but in a
Yeah.
in a perfection sort of way.
Yeah. Can this franchise and its fan base withstand another disappointing exit in the playoffs? It's been a lot. It's been a lot, though.
This one, they can for sure. Only because I think everyone wrote this season off after Embiid got hurt. So having him come back, they could have their hopes shattered anew. But I think that everyone was sort of like, oh, this is kind of house money. Embiid's back. Okay, cool. We're back in. I'm going to get a Bully shirt. They're available on the Cookies Hoops website.
They're going
incredible.
Fast. Yeah.
They've got skulls. They've got tombstones. Like, this is grim. I love it.
I'm not talking about the suckers who just like hate everything and claim that hating your team is actually loving your team. I don't ever believe that's the case with anything. It's like, oh, I'm terrible to my dog because I really love it and I want it to be a better dog. Like, get out of here. But I get disappointment, but turning that into like your identity is weird. But I'm talking about like level-headed fans and also the organization. I think you have a good point. I think the organization might see this as house money as well. But Joel Embiid is like getting more hurt and more old every year.
I mean, this is true. And I think this is a big offseason. If Philly is not able to use their max contract spot that's going to be opened up by the exit of Tobias Harris and getting a Paul George,
What if
which
they
has been
re-sign
rumored.
him? If they re-sign
Yeah.
him, what's gonna happen?
I'm saying if they use this money on like, hey, we're bringing back Tobias, I think Joel will ask out. I think he is too cognizant of his mortality, and he clearly has greater ambitions. Not than Philly, but greater ambitions in terms of being a GOAT. He really wants to win a title. He really wanted to win scoring titles. He really wanted to win MVP. Like, he is extremely ambitious.
I love
he
it.
wants to be that guy. And, like, I think he might say, look, of course, I like winning these individual accolades, but now it's becoming a blemish on my all-time resume. And unless we can add like a Paul George, I like playing in Philly. I like being the man here. I like being the idea of being on a team for my whole career, but I actually have to win a title. Like, I have to. It goes back to the kind of ring chasing Caitlin Clark idea. Like, you got to get one. If you're going to be in that GOAT conversation, you need to win a title. As boomer and simplistic and antithetical to a lot of the things that we talk about, it still is what it is.
It's too reductive, but it is the ultimate crescendo and goal of every NBA season. And Joel's, if I was Joel, I would seriously, after this season, look around and be like, with player agency, like, can I put myself in a situation to succeed? And there is no house money in an NBA career. Each appearance in the playoffs is not house money. It is actual savings. So they find the
right.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I want to hear this house money idea with the Knicks, though. I think you're right. I want you just to apply this to the Knicks, who have lost Julius Randle, but have gotten Mitchell Robinson and OG back. Are the Knicks playing with house money or their stakes?
The Knicks have been so bad for so long, it feels like house money, but like, I am going to eventually be crestfallen when they lose because I love this team. Julius Randle being out, like, I saw our buddy Ronnie be like, who's the best Knick since Jalen Brunson? Are we talking Ewing? I'm like, no, we're talking Julius Randle from 2 years ago. Like, he was an all NBA player. Losing that talent, that vertical spacing, that size, that playmaking from the four is bad. And given matchups, an early exit might happen. It is not house money. I think just being in the playoffs with a good team is so tremendous. I really want them to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. After that, insane. But I want them to get there.
You know who else is going to make a slightly early exit? Cookies. Yeah.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.